Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into the life of Talha ibn Ubaydillah.
One of the most prominent figures in early Islamic history.
Exactly. We're using this incredible lecture by Dr. Omar Suleiman as our guide.
It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. One thing that's got me thinking is this. Can someone be both incredibly wealthy and deeply spiritual at the same time?
That's a great question.
I mean, Talha's story seems to challenge that very idea, doesn't it?
It does, and it's a question that's still relevant even today.
For sure. So let's start with Talha's background. The lecture mentions he was born into the Banu Taym tribe.
Known for their generosity, right?
Yeah. He was also related to Abu Bakr.
His second cousin, A.N.D. son-in-law.
I know, right? It's like he was surrounded by these strong influences from the very beginning.
Absolutely. I mean, being part of Banu Taym probably instilled in him that value of generosity from a young age.
Makes sense. And then his connection to Abu Bakr.
One of the most influential figures in early Islam.
Put him right at the heart of this growing Muslim community. And here's something else that blew my mind. Talha was a successful cloth merchant.
Oh, yeah. He was bringing in serious money.
Like a substantial income even by today's standards. And he converted to Islam at just 18.
18, when he had so much to lose.
I know. Wealth, status, everything. Why risk it all like that?
Right. That's what makes his conversion so fascinating.
Totally.
He wasn't drawn to Islam because he was desperate or anything.
Right.
He saw something in Prophet Muhammad's message that really resonated with him. Something that went beyond his material comforts.
Deeper, right?
Much deeper.
The lecture even mentions a story about Talha meeting a Christian monk in Syria.
The one who predicted the coming of Prophet Muhammad.
That's the one. It's like destiny was calling him,
It's amazing.
But those early days in Mecca,
They weren't easy for new Muslims?
not at all. The lecture describes some pretty harsh punishments that Talha faced from his own tribe.
Just for his beliefs.
I know. He's even tortured alongside Abu Bakr.
Imagine facing that kind of opposition from your own family.
I can't even imagine.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
So we have Talha, this young, successful merchant, risking everything for his faith.
A man of conviction.
Absolutely. But he wasn't just a man of faith, he was also a warrior.
Oh, absolutely.
The lecture talks about how he missed the Battle of Badr.
Because he was on a mission for the Prophet.
Yeah. But, get this, even though he missed the actual fighting?
He still received the full reward of participating.
I know. It's crazy.
It shows you how much emphasis Islam places on intention.
Right. So it's not just about what you do, it's about how you do it.
Exactly. The Prophet recognized that Talha wasn't absent out of cowardice or anything, but out of obedience and dedication to a different mission.
Wow. That's fascinating. It really makes you think about how we approach our own actions, doesn't it?
It really does.
Like, what are our intentions behind the things we do?
Right, it adds a whole other dimension.
But then comes the Battle of Uhud.
Which the lecture calls Talha's Day.
That's right. Why was this battle so significant for him?
Well, Uhud was a defining moment for Talha.
Oh, yeah.
This is where his courage and loyalty were truly put to the test.
It was a pretty fierce battle, right?
One of the fiercest.
And the Muslims, they were facing a serious threat.
A serious threat indeed.
The lecture describes some pretty intense scenes.
No, absolutely.
Talha using his own body as a shield to protect the Prophet.
Talk about bravery.
Arrows raining down, piercing his hands as he tried to deflect them.
Wound after wound.
And yet he stood firm.
Unwavering.
It's a powerful image of self-sacrifice.
And one that earned him the title of living martyr from the Prophet himself.
Living martyr. Whoa, hold on a second. That's a pretty heavy title,
It is.
What does that even mean in the context of Islam?
Well, it signifies a level of sacrifice that's so profound,
Okay.
so unwavering in the face of death,
Right.
that it's as if the person has already given their life for their faith.
I see.
The Prophet was recognizing Talha's willingness to die, defending him and the Muslim community.
So it's not just about surviving the battle.
No.
It's about that unwavering dedication, even in the face of certain death.
Exactly.
Wow. And that title wasn't just an empty gesture, was it?
Not at all. The Prophet also declared that paradise was guaranteed for Talha.
It was a public acknowledgement of his incredible courage.
It was.
And the lecture says that despite the severity of his wounds at Uhud, Talha continued to fight alongside the Prophet in every single battle that followed.
Every single one.
He really lived up to that living martyr title.
He did. It showed that his courage wasn't just a one-time thing,
Right.
but a consistent part of his character.
But Talha's story isn't just about battlefield bravery, is it?
No, it's not.
It's also about a man who had immense wealth,
Immense.
but also this profound sense of generosity.
That's what makes his story so compelling.
And that's what I find so intriguing. We have this image of Talha the warrior,
Right.
but then the lecture paints this completely different picture when it comes to his wealth.
They do.
Apparently, he was earning a fortune, like 1,000 gold coins per day.
I know, it's hard to even comprehend.
It is.
But what's truly inspiring is how he chose to use that wealth.
Okay, let's talk about that.
He wasn't driven by greed or possessions.
Oh,
He saw his wealth as a way to serve God and his community.
wow. So different from how many people view wealth today.
Right. It's a real challenge to our modern way of thinking.
It is. It's like he was living this double life, you know? Warrior on one hand, super generous philanthropist on the other.
It's a great example of this key principle in Islam,
Which is,
balancing worldly success with spiritual growth.
yeah.
The lecture highlights Talha's Zud.
Zud.
Yeah, it's often translated as asceticism,
Okay.
but it's not just about living simply, you know?
What is it then?
It's about this detachment from material things.
Detachment.
Yeah, recognizing that true wealth is actually your connection with God.
That's tough though, right?
It is.
Especially in today's world,
Yeah,
where we're constantly bombarded with messages about acquiring more and more stuff.
it's everywhere you look.
But the lecture gives some incredible examples of Talha's generosity,
It does.
like giving away most of his earnings every single day,
Wow.
forgiving debts up to 30,000 dirhams.
That's a huge amount.
It is. It's hard to even fathom that level of detachment from wealth.
It's remarkable.
It really is.
And it wasn't just these grand gestures either.
Well,
He was known for consistently helping those in need, providing food and clothing, supporting widows and orphans.
his generosity was constant.
It really was a part of who he was.
No wonder the Prophet gave him those nicknames.
The good, the charitable, the beneficent.
Right. And those aren't just casual nicknames.
No.
They're reflections of his character.
Given to him by the Prophet himself.
It's amazing.
They really highlight how deeply Talha's actions aligned with Islamic values.
He wasn't just following rules.
No.
He was embodying the spirit of Islam.
Through his generosity and compassion.
It makes you wonder, though, what motivated him?
That's the question, isn't it?
Was it purely religious duty?
Or was there something more personal driving him?
The lecture doesn't really go into his inner thoughts, does it?
Not really.
But we can see how his faith was reflected in his actions.
Right.
It wasn't about showing off or anything.
Oh.
It was about genuinely using his wealth to make a difference.
To make a real impact.
It's truly inspiring.
Okay.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
The lecture also touches on Talha's later years.
The ones marked by political turmoil.
Yeah, following the assassination of Caliph Isman,
Right.
things get a bit more complicated here, don't they?
They do.
This period in early Islamic history, it was filled with internal conflicts and power struggles.
It was a very turbulent time.
It's important to remember that even within a community united by faith,
There can still be disagreements.
right, differing opinions on leadership and how things should be run.
Exactly.
And the lecture mentions Talha's support for Ali.
But also his deep regret for not being there to defend Uthman.
Yeah, he even says something like, "O Allah, take from me for Uthman until you are pleased."
That's a powerful statement.
Especially considering they were on opposing sides politically.
It really shows the complexity of the situation.
It does.
Talha wasn't blindly loyal to one side or the other.
No.
He was driven by principles of justice.
And righteousness.
He regretted not being able to protect Uthman, even though he disagreed with him politically.
It's kind of humanizing, isn't it?
It is.
It reminds us that these weren't just historical figures.
No.
They were real people.
Grappling with difficult situations.
Making tough decisions.
And it challenges us to look beyond those simplistic good versus evil narratives.
Right.
These were individuals trying to navigate uncharted territory.
Trying to figure out how to apply their faith.
To the very real complexities of leadership and governing.
So how do we reconcile Talha's earlier life
The warrior, the philanthropist.
with his involvement in these later political conflicts?
It's important not to judge historical figures through a modern lens.
I think that's easy to do sometimes.
It is.
But the context back then was vastly different.
It was.
Loyalty to the Muslim community, that was paramount.
Absolutely.
But there were these legitimate disagreements about how that loyalty should be shown.
Especially when it came to choosing a leader.
So it wasn't hypocrisy on Talha's part?
No.
It was more about different interpretations
Of what it meant to uphold Islamic values.
in a rapidly changing world.
Exactly.
And Talha's actions
Even his involvement in the Battle of the Camel.
can be seen as attempts to protect the Muslim community,
To maintain its unity.
even if they ultimately led to more conflict.
Unfortunately, that's how it played out.
It's a reminder that even good intentions don't always lead to peaceful outcomes.
That's true.
Speaking of outcomes, the lecture describes Talha's death in the Battle of the Camel.
And Ali's grief over his body.
Despite their political differences,
There was clearly a deep respect between them.
it's a really poignant scene. It highlights the human cost of these conflicts.
Even when they're fought in the name of religion,
Such a tragic end to a life filled with passion and commitment.
it's heartbreaking.
But the lecture doesn't end there, does it?
No, it
It
doesn't.
mentions a dream
About Talha's body
remaining intact
and exuding this beautiful fragrance.
even after death. It seems almost too fantastical to be true.
It does.
So what's the meaning behind it?
Symbolically, it speaks to the enduring legacy of a righteous life.
Okay.
In Islamic tradition, the state of the body after death,
Yeah.
it's often seen as a reflection of the soul's condition.
Interesting.
So the fragrant, intact body in the dream,
Mhm.
it suggests that Talha's deeds, his intentions, were pure.
Pleasing to God.
Exactly.
So we're not meant to take it literally,
No.
but rather as an affirmation of his spiritual standing.
Right.
And it connects to the idea that true legacy isn't about worldly achievements.
No, it's not.
It's about the impact you have on others.
On their hearts and minds.
And speaking of legacy, the lecture mentions his daughter, Aisha bin Talha.
Who became a renowned scholar of hadith.
It's incredible how his legacy continued through his children.
It is.
Imagine having Talha ibn Ubaydillah as your father. What a role model.
And her scholarship is particularly noteworthy.
How so?
Considering the context of the time,
Okay.
women weren't always encouraged to pursue religious knowledge.
Right.
But Aisha bint Talha, she became a leading figure in the field of hadith.
It speaks to her determination,
Her intellectual curiosity.
but also maybe to the environment fosters within her family.
It's possible.
Makes you wonder if Talha's own emphasis on education
His thirst for knowledge.
played a role in shaping his children's paths.
I think it's very likely.
And it highlights how even personal choices
Like emphasizing education within the family.
can have this ripple effect.
And would contribute to the broader community.
It's amazing.
It is.
Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
there's one more thing I want to touch on.
What's that?
The names Talha chose for his sons.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
The lecture mentions he named them all after prophets.
Muhammad, Imran, Musa, Yaqub, Ismail, and Isa.
Wow, what do you make of that?
It suggests a deep reverence for the prophetic tradition
Mm-hmm.
and a desire to instill in his sons those values embodied by those figures.
Faith, righteousness, leadership.
Exactly.
It's like he was setting this incredibly high bar for them.
Hoping they would follow in those footsteps.
It's inspiring
Perhaps it speaks to his own aspirations for the world.
to be guided by those prophetic values.
Justice, compassion, unwavering belief in God.
It just adds another layer to this already complex and inspiring figure.
It does.
We've seen Talha the warrior, the philanthropist, the devout Muslim, navigating a tumultuous world.
And now the father instilling prophetic values in his children.
It's a reminder that history is more than just battles and politics.
It's about people's lives.
Their choices, their relationships, the legacies they leave behind.
And in Talha's case, that legacy is one of courage, generosity, unwavering faith, and a deep commitment to his community.
And we're back for our final look at the life of Talha ibn Ubaydillah.
I feel like I've learned so much already.
Me too. This lecture has given me a whole new understanding of what it meant to be a leader in those early days of Islam.
It's really fascinating to see how they navigated those early years after the Prophet's death.
It wasn't just about conquering new lands, was it?
No, it was much more complex than that.
They were building a new society,
Establishing systems of governance.
figuring out how to interpret Islamic principles.
In the context of all these rapidly changing circumstances,
And Talha, he wasn't afraid to jump into those conversations.
he wasn't one to sit on the sidelines.
The lecture mentions his role in that council to choose the next caliph.
After Umar passed away.
It sounds like he didn't want the position for himself.
No, but he definitely made his voice heard.
He wasn't interested in personal power, was he?
No, he was focused on what he thought was best for the community.
He was known for his wisdom.
His fairness.
His opinion carried a lot of weight.
It did.
It makes me think about how we often equate leadership with titles and positions.
Yeah, but Talha shows us that true leadership is something different.
It's about using your influence,
To advocate for what's right.
regardless of your formal role.
He was a leader in the truest sense of the word.
Absolutely. Someone who inspired others through his actions,
His integrity.
his commitment to those core principles of Islam.
So we've explored all these different facets of Talha's life.
The warrior, the philanthropist, the devout Muslim, the father.
It's quite a story.
But I keep coming back to that question we started with.
About wealth and spirituality.
Yeah, can someone be both incredibly wealthy and deeply spiritual?
I think Talha's life gives us a pretty clear answer.
He showed us that wealth, when viewed through the lens of faith, can be a powerful tool.
For spiritual growth.
And for serving God.
He completely shattered that stereotype of the greedy, materialistic rich guy.
Instead, he saw his wealth as a responsibility.
A way to uplift his community.
To live out his faith in a tangible way.
It really challenges us to rethink our own relationship with money and possessions.
Yes.
It's not about demonizing wealth.
It's about aligning our intentions and actions with our values.
So it's not just about how much you have.
It's about how you use it.
Talha's legacy wasn't built on his fortune.
It was built on all those lives he touched.
Through his generosity.
His compassion.
Talha ibn Ubaydillah, a warrior, a philanthropist, a man of deep faith.
He navigated a world of wealth and power with grace and integrity.
His story is truly inspiring.
And what strikes me is how relevant it still is today.
It is.
His example challenges us to think about our own values.
Our relationship with material things.
And how we can use whatever resources we have to make a positive difference.
Absolutely.
Talha's life wasn't just about historical events.
It was about embodying those timeless principles.
That we can all learn from.
No matter our background or beliefs.
He reminds us that true success isn't about what we accumulate.
But about the legacy we leave behind.
A legacy of kindness, compassion, and service.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the life of Talha ibn Ubaydillah,
I want to leave you with this thought.
What kind of legacy are you building?
What impact will your life have on others?
Talha's story shows us that even amidst life's chaos and challenges,
we have the power to choose a path of generosity.
of faith.
Of unwavering commitment to what we believe in.
It's a choice worth making.
And a choice that can have a ripple effect.
Creating a positive impact that extends far beyond our own lifetimes.
Talha ibn Ubaydillah's legacy lives on.
Not just in history books,
but in the hearts and minds of all those who are inspired by his incredible life.